Guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about 15 champions, actually more than 15. I'm going to cheat here and include a couple tandem champions at the beginning of today's video that I think either need a buff or a nerf inside this game. Basically champions I want to see balanced. Now there are, just looking through the champion index inside this game, many of whom I actually have, there are so many champions that could use a buff specifically. There's a lot of bad champions inside this game, okay? So obviously this is not an all-inclusive list of every single champion in the game. We know we're getting a big balance change in 2 updates. Well, the 1 update just landed today, or depending on the time that you watch this video, 2.1 just landed. 2.2 should be coming in a few weeks, and we know there's going to be a huge rebalancing of champions at that time. So I have kind of my own wish list here. I don't own all these champions, but again, I want to start by focusing on some tandems, right? Companion champions. I think that personally, companion champions is a really, really cool thing inside this game, right? And you know, some of them are really good, like Rotos and Sylphy, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. There's plenty of champions. There's even Xavier and Bellinor as well, and Zakira and Alika. I think that maybe they could use a little buff. It is Alika, right? It is Alika. I think they could use a little buff, but overall, they're pretty good and they have good synergy together. So I think that's interesting. And where to start with all these bad epic champions and these bad rare champions? My answer to that is with the companion champions. Why not make them more compelling? That way it can kind of give us 2 champions to build up and have a really cool team kind of built around their synergies together vis-a-vis their unlocked skills. So let's go ahead and jump into the first companion buffs that I want to see. And again, we'll cheat here, and this will be champion number 1. So the first 2 champions I want to see get buffed are Houndspawn and Hellfang. They're both rare champions from Demon Spawn, and they are, again, companion champions. Houndspawn is Force, Hellfang is Spirit Affinity, and all I think that they need to do to these champions to make them viable, basically they have a stun. Houndspawn has a stun on his A1. On his A2, he has attacked 1 enemy 2 times with a 75% chance of landing the big version of decreased defense, and on his A3, only available when Hellfang is on the same team, is attack all enemies, will ignore defense and block damage buffs if the target has a freeze debuff. So, as you can see, this champion is pretty lousy in by himself, like really bad. 93 base speed too. He's very slow. If we look at Hellfang, he has the AoE freeze. So, target skills on cooldown 20% on the A1. On the A2, he has a weaken on 1 enemy. And on the A3, on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, he has an AoE freeze at a 75% chance. So how do you buff these 2 champions? Well, I think the solution here is making this a 3-turn instead of a 4-turn when booked. So turning this to 5 turns unbooked. And for Houndspawn, same thing, right? Changing this from a 4-turn when booked or a 5-turn when unbooked, just basically 1 turn less. I think that if you make this AoE with ignoring 100% of defense and block damage on a 3-turn when booked, and then you make that freeze on a 3-turn when booked, I think that instantaneously these 2 champions aren't OP when together because they're taking up 2 slots in your team too. But you need to have those freezes down, and you know, there's too many kind of qualifiers here. I think that putting both of those on a 3-turn would make this tandem a lot more appealing and really worth building up, especially in the early and the mid game. So that's my first buff wanted inside this game. The next tandem is an Ogre tribe. We're moving on to Epic here. Towering Titan is a Void champion, and Cage Breaker, which is right here, is his partner in crime, okay? So Towering Titan's actually a pretty good champion already. He has a decreased defense, 50% chance of landing on his A1. On his A2, he has a 4-time at random, a chance to placing a provoke there as well at a 60% chance on a 3-turn, not bad. And then he has the increased defense on all allies for 2 turns, and a continuous heal buff on this champion for 2 turns as well. So you can see already, really solid champion, and then he has a transfer 50% of the damage inflicted on Cage Breaker to him instead, okay? So on this champion, Towering Titan, I think that you could probably make him a little bit more appealing by potentially putting this down to a 4-turn cooldown. Or making this an AoE. Not both, I think he'd be too overpowered, but instead of this 4-time at random, just making it a straight up AoE, I think that would be all the buff that he really needs. But with Cage Breaker, the problem with Cage Breaker is sure, he's an alright champion, has decreased increased defense on his A1 as well. He has a sleep for time at random on his A2, and then he has an AoE with decreased max HP by 50% of damage inflicted, grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy on a 4-turn. So the problem here is he has no ability that pairs with Towering Titan. It's a one-way relationship. That's not cool, man. This relationship is not gonna last. I think Cagebreaker, giving him either an extra ability or adding something to one of these abilities, like Burn Away, for example, ignores 25% of defense if Towering Titan is on the same team. Just adding that caveat to one of these abilities will make him much more viable, because Cagebreaker is just a very average champion at best right now. So you add a little bit of a better ability, and then add, a companion ability. There we go. Champion ability? What, bro? And then put him with Towering Titan. Towering Titan changes the provoke to an AoE instead of 4 times at random, and all of a sudden you have a really, really formidable duo that I think could help a lot of players out there. Next up is actually going to be another rare duo here, guys. This is the last of my companion champions on this list, but it's actually going to be not Banshee, but Temptress. So Temptress is a companion champion to Seducer, who is a Void Undead Horde champion as well, and I think Seducer is already great. I think he's fine the way he is, but I want Temptress to be a little bit better as a tandem option with him, and I think to make her better, she has her kit is very simple here. Attacks one enemy, chance of stealing 1 random buff from the target on the A1. It'd be cool if she could steal all the buffs from the target. Maybe that would be a little bit too OP, but maybe 2 buffs if Seducer's on the same team. On the A2 though, 4 times at random. Again, I want to change this to an AoE. And then on the A3, I think this is fine. Grants an extra turn when Seducer is on the same team. It is a self-buff ability. Increase crit rate and increase attack on this champion for 2 turns. It's not the best ability in the game, but I think making this an AoE, again, this just keeping it as is, maybe even reducing it to a 4-turn, going down to a 3-turn. And then this maybe adding another buff, maybe not if Seducer's on the same team. I think that makes her more interesting and more viable, again, in that companion kind of dynamic with Seducer. So those are our companion champions. Let's move on to the next one. It's going to be a Nerf. So Sylphy the Lost Bride, I am a proud owner, so you can't hold it against me when I ask for a Nerf. She is just really, really good. The best champion in the game by far. I think her kit is just, it's, when I pulled her, she helped me everywhere. Not helped me. She improved me everywhere in the entire game. She's just so incredibly good. Like, compared to some of the champions we've asked for buffs on, compared to some of the other champions we're going to ask for buffs for later on this video, man, she's just makes them look ridiculous, right? This is insane. 3-turn cooldown. She has a turn meter. She has a block debuff. She has an increased defense. She has the increased speed. Basically, 4 of the best buffs in the game, all in one ability on a 3-turn cooldown with the revival. The revival has a full turn meter on it too, on a 4-turn cooldown. And then she has the sleep and the heal on the A1, and then she also has the heal every single turn on a passive, with the Rotos on there as well, removing all debuffs from him at the start of the turn if they're on the same team. My God. Also has a chance of removing Freeze and Fear from each ally at the start of their turn. Sylphy, I don't know what they were thinking when they released her, man. I mean, they must have been thinking, we're just going to release the most OP champion, and there it is. There you have it. Talk about power creep, right? When they introduce a champion like Sylphy, she actually takes away from all the other like really, really good support champions in the game. There are plenty of them. I won't name them all, but she kind of just steals the thunder, so to speak. Everybody who has Sylphy uses Sylphy. There's no doubt about it, and I think that's okay, but she's just too strong in my opinion, and I own her again. So I think you could honestly just remove this entire passive, and she'd still be one of the best champions, if not the best champion in the game. I'm not saying we should remove her passive. I'm just saying I don't know how to make her worse, to be honest with you guys. You know what, one way, you know what, a small nerf. I don't like overreacting on nerfs or buffs, to be honest with you guys. So you'll notice that a lot of the buffs I suggested are just, relatively small. I mean, the decreased 1-turn cooldown is maybe a big buff, but still, with Love Beyond Death, you could either increase it by 1 turn, essentially removing one of these -1 cooldowns. They would never do that because of legendary books, but making it a 7-turn, or they could not make it a full turn meter, right? there's no reason it needs to have full turn meter. I would almost rather see this with a, 80% HP or 75% HP and a 30% turn meter. I think that would be way more fair, but, reviving a champion who didn't already have a full turn meter anyway, most likely, and then they immediately get to go, that's insane. That's insane. I mean, not even talking about the rest of her kit is insane. So my feeling is, let's just nerf this Love Beyond Death a little bit and see what happens after that. That would be my suggestion. Let me look at her stats too. Her base speed is 114, man. God. All right, the next nerf, we don't even have to cut, because we're gonna go right to, we're gonna go right to her boyfriend, or her groom, excuse me. Her dearly wedded is Rotos, the Lost Groom. So Rotos, I think he also deserves a nerf. I don't want to go too crazy because he's, just because I say these champions need a nerf doesn't mean they're uncounterable, right, in the arena, for example. But I think that this champion specifically, on a 3-turn cooldown with the granting extra turn, and he's ignoring unkillable, ignoring block damage, ignoring 75% of the target's cooldown, Fated Destruction in particular. He also has a chance of getting the extra turn on the A1 too. All the extra turns needs to end with Rotos, right? Not all of them, but certainly I think that you could, get rid of grants an extra turn if this attack kills the enemy, or get rid of the A1 having a chance at granting an extra turn, right? Again, these were small nerfs, but I do think that Rotos is broken, especially in the arena. In dungeons, he's still amazing, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's just really, really good, not screaming that he needs to be nerfed. It's really arena, I'm talking like gold 3, 4, platinum tier, that Rotos can just get out of control if he goes before your champions. Relatively easy to kill as long as you have a multi-hitter on your team, but can be just destructible. What can I say? When he's on offense, just taking one turn after another, your whole team is dead, So Rotos, I also think, needs a nerf. Next up is a buff for Warchief. Warchief is a Skinwalker legendary. Man, they've already buffed this dude in the past, and they just can't seem to get him there. He is just not a great champion. He's not a great champion, guys. Passive reflects 60% of the damage taken back onto the attacker, and then defense increases by 15% for each dead ally. Not a bad passive, to be fair, but then the rest of his kit is just meh, Attacks one enemy 3 times, has a 35% chance when booked of placing a provoke for 1 turn, damage based on defense. Again, attacks one enemy on his A2, places a provoke debuff for 3 turns, steals 2 random buffs from the target. This is a legendary champion here, man. That's it. That's his whole kit. I would rather have many epics over this champion. He just needs more, right? He needs more, man. I think that even taking the Marauder ability as A2, and it's already on a 3-turn, I think just putting the provoke down to a 2-turn, but making this an AoE and having be an AoE provoke champion, I think then instantaneously he becomes one of the better legendaries in the game, and maybe that's what he deserves after being mediocre or bad for so long in the game, because then it has much more synergy with the A3 because he's reflecting that damage back onto the attacker, and you could even reduce this a little bit if that's what it took, but I think actually even keeping this at 60%, I think he would not be broken, believe it or not, if this was an AoE on the Marauder, providing you take that provoke down to a, even if you go down to a 1-turn, it would still make him on an AoE on the 1-turn provoke, it would still make him really solid for the arena, right? So I don't know what the solution here is on Warchief, but I feel for people who have him because you might still use him, but he's just not, he doesn't feel legendary at all. He needs a buff, he needs another buff in the game. Next up is another champion that I am lucky, I guess, enough to own. He received a buff as well and is Mortu Macabre. So Mortu Macabre is a cool champion on paper, looks cool. But now that we have the Rotoses of the world out there, his Peril ability, which is an unlockable ability, it's a great ability, just difficult to unlock. Unless you're going against him, he is the boss of the game in stage 12 or whatever. It's 12, right? Stage 12 of campaign, obviously. Come on, Ash. But he's the boss in 12-7 of the game. And it feels like he always lands Peril when he's attacking you. But when you have him on your team, he's never landing Peril, right? It's the secret skill, Peril, has a 20% chance to unlock. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't a secret skill. I don't think that secret skills are that good on any champion anymore, especially with the power creep that we talked about earlier. I think this peril needs to really be I'd rather have this on a 5-turn cooldown. I'd rather have this on a 7-turn cooldown than have a secret skill. At least he'd be viable in the arena that way, right? I mean, I kind of kid there, but I think the 20% unlock, the RNG, makes him very undependable, and the rest of his kit is all right. He has a 2-hitter on the Falling from Grace AoE. Doesn't deal much damage at all, but he does have the, he has the block buffs, excuse me, on a 4-turn cooldown. Not too bad, 100% chance of landing. Not too bad, but just not a great champion overall, even despite them buffing him as well, similar to Warchief in the past. Next up, guys, I want to see a buff to Tanix Hateflower. She is the champion that a lot of people are getting today or yesterday or a few days ago or whatever. She's a daily log and reward champion. Listen, man, she's not awful, but she's bad, right? So she has this passive where she's taking 5% damage for allies, but the problem is she's an attack-based champion, right? And she doesn't have an AoE. Spiteful Cut could just be an AoE. You know, it has a decreased speed on there, which is not bad at all, but it could just be attack all enemies, right? I don't think that's that awful of an idea to make it attack all enemies. And then she has a heal on her A1, providing that targets have a decreased speed on them, the targets that she's attacking, right? So the deal is that she should just be a defense-based champion. That's all I'm looking for on Tanix, and I like mentioning these daily log and reward champions as viable buff champions because most people have them or will have them at some point, so you're impacting a lot of people with one balance change and just giving them another viable option in this game. I think just changing her to defense-based champion and swapping out the attack stat for the defense stat, I don't think they'll do it, but I think that is the proper way to build this champion in terms of conceptually. She should be a defense-based champion because she's eating all this damage for them already, well, 5% on her Unbreakable passive. Next up is a champion that I own, man, for a Void Legendary, Baron. He looks kind of cool. Some people think he looks really lame. I think he looks really cool. Someone in one of my comments last time I was talking about this champion was like, dude, he's an awful looking champion too. Man, I actually like the kind of the golden motif here on his armor. But the thing is, either way on this champion is, look at that base attack for 1575. He's not hitting very hard, very low speed for a legendary, for a Void Legendary at 90. On his A1, he has a attack remaining enemies with surplus damage. Kind of like Draco's, only way worse because it doesn't do the extra damage to them. So that's Trample. Has a 10% to unlock Sky Piercer. On his A2, it has a 20% chance of unlocking Sky Piercer. Has a decreased defense, a single target ability. On his A3, has a 40% chance to unlock the secret skill Sky Piercer on a 4-turn cooldown. Again, a hit one enemy. And I'll tell you what, man. He's not even doing tons of damage on the Righteous Charge, you know? The thing is if these abilities were doing a lot of damage as is, kind of like an arrow type champion, then I'd be way more satisfied with him. You finally get to Sky Piercer. Once you unlock it, and it attacks all enemies, deals pure damage, will ignore shield and block damage buffs. Pure damage meaning ignoring defense too, I believe. It hits very hard. The thing is again, it's RNG based. We talked about this with more to Macabre. I'm just not a fan of it. I think that Sky Piercer should, I don't know, what can they do, right? Can we increase the chance of unlocking this ability in Sky Piercer? Can we just make this an AoE instead? Righteous Charge, that way at least we have, I don't know, at least we have for Righteous Charge a little bit more versatility in his kit alongside Sky Piercer for an AoE damage. I don't know what the solution is. Do you guys have any good ideas on Baron? I don't, other than I hate the idea that it's a secret skill. I just don't like secret skills as much as I do just putting it on a long cooldown or something like that. Anyway, guys, Baron definitely needs a buff in my opinion, just not sure exactly what it should be. Next up is Tormund the Cold. Okay, so today or yesterday or whenever you're watching this video, Tormund received a bug fix to where he wasn't freezing champions. Do you guys notice? He wasn't freezing champions when their turn meter is filled like he used to do, right? So he received that kind of buff today back. And the weird thing is Tormund was still kind of all over the place in the arena, even when he wasn't freezing everybody when their turn meter is filled. Personally, I would like to see, I don't mind that he has that utility in his kit. I do think he was a little bit underwhelming, I guess, when he wasn't doing that, even though everybody was still pretty much using him. But my thought process is, has a 15% chance of placing a freeze debuff on each enemy when their turn meter, when they have their turn meter filled. And then the 15% chance applies for each effect individually in cases where, okay. So basically, I personally would just bring this down a little bit to like 10%. I just don't like the turn meter passive on him. Although, you know, I'm open to your guys' criticism on this one. I don't use Tormund. I don't have Tormund. I did not fuse Tormund. That's because for whatever reason I was traveling. I have no idea why, but I didn't do it. And I kind of regret doing so. So maybe I'm bitter here. But truthfully, I liked the meta where Tormund wasn't freezing everybody constantly as soon as their turn meter filled. I personally would like to see that not removed, but just brought down a little bit, kind of in line to what we're used to the last few months. What do you guys think about Tormund? Let me know in the comments below. Next up, guys, is Karrfan. Karrfan is a Demon Spawn Legendary Force Affinity champion. On his A1, he has an extra hit if the target is under an increased attack buff. Okay. Punish Hubris, I guess is apropos for the name. On AoE here on Butcher's Glee is A2, grants an extra turn and resets the cooldown of On the Hunt skill if this attack kills an enemy on a 3 turn, not too bad. On the Hunt though is a perfect Veil with an increased attack on this champion for 2 turns on a 5 turn cooldown. His passive is decreases damage by 40% while under a Veil or perfect Veil buff. Problem is he doesn't hit hard even with the 1509 attack. You get this champion, you look at his skills, you look at his kit, and you think, well, I could use this champion. He seems like a really good nuker, really good damage dealer for my team. He's not. That's the problem, right? You get rares, you get epics who are dealing way more damage than Karrfan is, and that's a shame because it's not just him. There's a bunch of champions that I could talk about in today's video, a bunch of legendaries, a few come to mind, that have really high base attacks, and they don't deal much damage. I hate that, man. I think I don't know if it's, you know, I'm not cynical enough to think it's intentional, but it gets you excited about a champion thinking they're going to be a great damage dealer. Maybe tricks you into upgrading them and building them out, and then you don't realize until they're maxed that, wait a second, the only way Karrfan's going to be a viable nuker for me is if I have God tier gear and I have them in crit, 80% crit damage gauntlets. I have 300% crit damage on this character. That's the only way he's going to be viable for me. And to me, that's just not cool. Anyway, Karrfan does need a buff. I would like to see him do more damage, honestly. And then, get this extra hit out of there. Just give him 2 hits on his A1, all right? And then, I kind of like how the Veil and the Perfect Veil kind of synergize. But all things being equal, it's really Butcher's Glee just needs to do more damage. In all honesty, that's how you need to fix this champion, in my opinion. Next up is Growhawk Mossbeard, guys. We talked about this champion quite a bit, so I'm gonna keep it moving for the rest of this video here. But basically, this champion is only good again, and you can say this about basically any champion, I guess, but he's only good if you have like the absolute god tier team around him. He is actually on the fastest run that you can do on auto on Dragon's Lair. So like the biggest whales in the game actually run Growhawk Mossbeard on the team. But what good is a champion, especially a fusion champion, if he can't help like 99.99999% of players who actually pull him, who actually fuse him? And that's the case, with Growhawk, right? So I think that the cool thing about Growhawk is I actually think he's a really cool champion. I like his kit in general. I like that it's outside the box. I like allies under poison debuff inflict 7.5% more damage for each poison debuff on them, and he puts poisons on your own team. It's a really cool kind of a kit. I like him. He's just not that great. So I would like to see them tweak this 7.5% more damage for each poison debuff on them, stacking to a maximum of 30. I would like to see it stacked to a maximum of 40, maybe inflict by around 9% for each poison, and see if that's enough to make up for the fact that you have him on your team. He's not a huge damage dealer himself, so you're already dealing that much, 20% less damage by having him as one of your support / attack attack-based champions on your team, right? So I would like to see them tweak the numbers a little bit here on his passive to make him a little bit more viable. So next up is Skulllord Vargal, guys. Skulllord is another champion, another fusion champion who is just lackluster basically everywhere in the game. I know some people who have him and they don't even run him in Faction Wars, which kind of says a lot because Lizardmen are not, you know, the easiest faction out there for Faction Wars. But, you know, ultimately, again, his base stats are really good on this champion. 107 speed, 1300 defense. He has a defense-based damage dealer as well. He has a high attack for no reason, I guess, right? He doesn't have any attack-based skills, but whatever. Not a high attack, but a decent attack for a non-attack-based champion. And a lot of HP at 27,000 HP. His A3 is his strongest ability, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a decreased attack for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown, though. I mean, Abyssal Clutch could easily be brought down to a 3-turn cooldown, in my opinion. And then he has just a strengthen buff on this champion for 2 turns, and then has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff on a target enemy for 1 turn on a 2-turn cooldown. So not bad that it's a 2-turn, but you know, if the strengthen was on all allies, immediately he would be, I would think he'd be viable for most of the people who've used him, at least, you know, the majority of them. But as is, just not enough. He has this kind of funny passive, right? Revive Skullsworn, who's not that good, with 50% HP and 50% turn meter at the start of each turn. So that is Skulllord, guys. I think he needs some help. All right, guys. So I was gonna go, last but not least, I was gonna go with Growhawk the Bloodied, a champion who I just pulled and I maxed out, and I did a whole guide on him the other day. I think I called it like maxing the worst legendary in the game because he did have the worst ratings out of any legendary in the game. Not that we read into ratings here on the channel, but it is what it is. But I was impressed with him. Granted, I had God tier on him. I still think he needs a buff. I would like to see, I would like to see a buff to this champion. There's no doubt about it, but he wasn't as bad as I thought he was going to be. Unbound Anger actually hits pretty hard, and the Lord of War is a great ability too, especially stealing the target's turn meter. However, when you compare him to a champion like Maneater, an epic champion, I still think he's not as good, but I do think that Tila Gormain is worse than Growhawk. I think that Tila, first of all, look at that speed. Ugh, 92 speed, gross, man. Her stats suck. And then she has a steal 1 random buff on the A1. On the A2, she has a 1 enemy HP burn with a continuous heal buff on all allies if the attack is critical. Not bad. Her damage is based off of HP, which is decent at 22k. And then an AoE with a chance of placing the leech, 100% chance of placing the leech, and a heal reduction. That's it on a 4-turn. Oof, man. I hate AoE heal reduction champions just in general, because heal reduction is one of those debuffs that you only want it when you want it. And then half the time, especially against like clan boss or anything like that, you know, it's actually hurting you. You don't want it on there. But either way, guys, I think that, man, how do you make this champion better other than actually just making her hit harder? I don't know. It feels like she should have like a passive or like giving herself a shield based on her HP. I think putting her in a shield set is like the only utility you can get out of her. You can stack her HP really high, have her do a decent amount of damage, have that leech on there, and then have the shield. So kind of using her as a really nice shield support champion with the leech too. But with all that being said, it's just not enough, man. It's not enough. She's not a great. She's a bad champion, you know. She feels like an epic champion to me, and I'm not sure 100% how to fix her. Other than, you know, this one, Pyre Strike, put it down to a 3-turn. You're hitting 1 enemy, and it's giving the continuous heal buff. So I think that if it can up her healage a little bit by making this a 3-turn, keeping this one at a 4-turn or 5-turn, 4-turn when booked, and then on the A1, maybe healing all allies by, you know, 1% or 3% of the damage inflicted or something along those lines, or their max HP or her max HP. I think now you're talking. Now you can kind of see the synergy in her kit kind of coming together as a really good continuous heal support champion with the leech. Guys, that's my list of the champions I want to see buffed or nerfed the most. Who did I forget? Who is your #1 champion that you want to see nerfed or buffed in this game? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.